p.m. This meeting will now come to order. The Falls City Independent School District Board of Trustees is now in open session. Mr. Secretary, please note in the minutes that all board members are present, and as such we have a quorum. Please also note that no one has requested to address the board in the citizens open forum, and that no one is elected to join us as our guest. Would everyone please stand for the prayer? Lord, we thank you for our community in this school. Please continue to bless us and keep this a special place. Lord, as our students, faculty, and staff enjoy the summer break, please watch over them and keep them safe in their travels and their activities. We ask that you also watch over Falls City's 7-on-7 team as they travel to the state tournament next week. Keep them safe in their travels and while they're playing the game. Lord, we ask that you guide this team of 8 assembled here in their duties. Grant us the knowledge and wisdom to make sound, ethical decisions. Give us the strength to carry out what we put in place, and above all, the understanding that everything we do here should be for the purpose of furthering the education of our students and providing them all the opportunity to succeed, both here and after they have blessed us. In your name we pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible. Please be seated. We have no public comments. We go to recognitions and introductions. Mr. Brady Lissy could not be here today, so we will do that recognition of his state track meet achievements in July. So then we will go to item D, consent agenda items. Consider for approval consent items on the agenda. Items that have been marked consent are routine matters that have been discussed at a previous meeting or in report to the Board of Trustees. These are the approval of minutes of the previous board meetings, regular 5/8 of 19 and special of 5/28 and 19, and the approval of bills and checks written since the last meeting.
So trustees, first off, I want to tell you that our AC stopped working this afternoon, so that's why I had to do the alarm. We got the fan going, so kind of one extreme to the other, so hopefully it'll stay comfortable enough to have the meeting. On the bills, the only thing that is outside the norm, on the back of the second page, we have $1,770 for Phelps parking lot installation. So if you noticed today, they actually installed 2 lights, security lights, LED park. One's right there next to the discus ring, and the other one is next across from Mr. Brown's house, just to help illuminate the rest of that parking. So $1,700 for those fixtures and the installation. Everything else is fairly routine.
Move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Motion's been made by Marlon, seconded by Jerry, that we approve the consent agenda items as presented. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. We'll move now to item E, action items. First, we will consider for approval the interlocal cooperation agreement for the Cooperative Disciplinary Alternative Education Campus with Floresville ISD. Mr. Cavelli.
So trustees, those of you who are tenured and been on the board for a little while, if you remember, right when I first got hired, Mr. Patterson was here, and we were in kind of a budget crunch. At that time, we elected to pull out of the Floresville DAEP, Discipline Alternative Education Program, and since that time, we have been without one. We've been negotiating back and forth, trying to get to a price point that we felt comfortable with. They are across the board, doesn't matter the size or how often you send kids, they charge the same rate per enrollment. So we were in an area where we were asked to spend around $40,000 per year, and we're very limited on, we hadn't sent a kid up until this year to DAP, so the last 4 years we have not sent anybody. But at some point, we're going to get to the area where we needed to have a placement for those students. So this year, we actually were able to get into Nixon for a little while. Nixon has about the same price point as Floresville, but it's just not very convenient for our students if they get placed there. You know, the drive is pretty extended, and Floresville would be a much better option for us. So going back to Floresville, we're able to renegotiate and come up with a price point of around $12,000, where they will be able to house all of our, they will only accept 6th through 12th graders, but that's better than what we had. So they redid their programming and how they did the fees to where we feel comfortable moving forward with it. And again, this does not contain JJAEP. That's still at a daily rate, so if we get a fourth place, JJAEP will step and play that elevated daily rate. But DAEP, if we ever do need to use it, well, now at least we'll have a place where we can send our students. And they do a good job with the kids. They do a good program where they don't miss out on class time and get their credits. Okay, any questions on DAEP?
I move to approve the interlocal cooperative agreement for the cooperative disciplinary alternative education campus with Floresville ISD.
Second.
Motion's been made by Barbara, seconded by Marlon, to approve the interlocal cooperation agreement for the cooperative disciplinary alternative education campus with Floresville ISD. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item 2 under action items, consider for approval the 2019 through 2020 regular school board meeting calendar.
So trustees, we typically meet the third Wednesday of the month at 6:30. We do have a few dates that are adjusted on the calendar, so I did the same dates we had this year. August is pushed back, that way we can adopt our budget. So it's the last Wednesday in August. December the 11th, that's the second Wednesday. We are out of school the third Wednesday, so I bumped that up. January is pushed back to the 4th because of Stock Show. So the week of Stock Show would be the third Wednesday, so I pushed that back. And then May is also bumped up due to banquets, so it is actually the second Wednesday. Everything else would be the third Wednesday.
I'll make a motion to approve the 2019-2020 regular school board meeting calendar presented by Superintendent Todd McGough. I second.
Motion made by Keith, seconded by BJ, that we approve the 2019 through 2020 regular school board meeting calendar as presented. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item number 3 under action items, consider for approval canine contraband detection contract.
So trustees, this is the contraband officer we've used for an extended period. He does a lot of districts in the area. He has 6 visits, 3 full days where they actually come in and we sweep locker rooms and hallways, backpacks, and then 3 that they do parking lots only. The visits are unannounced. Ms. Blocker scheduled those at opportune times. And again, with this day and age, having an officer present with canine detection is a good deterrent for our students. So we would like to continue services with them and it be the same as we've had the last 2 years.
I move we approve the canine contraband detection contract as presented.
I second it.
Motion's been made by Jerry, seconded by Barbara, that we approve the canine contraband detection contract as presented. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Under action items number 4, consider for approval appointing Brenda Yamasek, the Karnes County Tax Assessor Collector, to evaluate the effective and rollback tax rates for the 2019 tax year.
So trustees, every year we have to appoint somebody to calculate our effective and rollback tax rates. Ms. Yamasek has been doing it since she has been our tax assessor collector. She's named, but she actually does not do it. Richard had to have a lawyer who is there that goes through the template with us that helps calculate it. All of the other districts in the county, other than Karnes City, all go to her and they do it at the same time. So it's my recommendation that we continue to use her to set our rollback rate.
We approve appointing Brenda Yamasek, the Karnes County Tax Assessor Collector, to calculate the effective and rollback tax rates for the 2019 tax year.
Second.
Motion been made by Martin, seconded by BJ, that we approve appointing Brenda Yamasek as the Karnes County Tax Assessor Collector to calculate the effective and rollback taxes for the 2019 tax year. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Okay, item number 5 under action items is consider for approval the 2019 to 2021 District of Innovation Plan.
So trustees, you may remember that we were actually already done that this year. We did it in February prior to adopting our calendar. But when I notified TEA that we had approved our District of Innovation Plan, they said, no, you didn't, because you didn't notify us first that you were going to be a District of Innovation. Well, we're renewing our District of Innovation. I didn't realize that we had to notify you first. So they told me I give them notification, and now you guys can officially approve it. So this is the exact same plan that we have had in the previous 3 years, other than we moved up. Instead of being the third Wednesday start date, we moved it to the 15th of August. Everything else in the plan remains the same. And this is the same plan that you guys actually approved in February. It just now makes it legal because I've notified TDA that we were going to become a District of Innovation.
Do the names need to be changed? So
I will, yeah, I'll update the names now.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, I will update the names to reflect the new trustees that are now in.
I'll make a motion to approve the 2019 to 2021 District of Innovation Plan as presented by Superintendent Todd Bell.
Second.
Motion's been made by Keith, seconded by Marlon, to approve the 2019 to 2021 District of Innovation Plan as presented by Superintendent Todd Bellick. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Item number 6 under action items. Consider for the 2019-2020 school year to delegate contractual authority to obligate the school district under Texas Education Code 11.1511 C4 to the superintendent solely for the purpose of obligating the district under TEC Chapter 41, subchapters A and D, and the rules adopted by the Commissioner of Education as authorized under TEC 41.006. This includes approval for the agreement of the purchase of attendance credits, netting Chapter 42 funding.
So trustees, as I told Mr. Lissy when we were setting the agenda, I'm not sure that this item is still relevant. This is typically something that we've had to do every June since I've been here. We have to delegate authority to me so we can purchase attendance. This is our recapture payment. With the legislation passing of House Bill 3, they have adjusted the language and how recapture is factored. So now it's no longer Chapter 41 and 42. Now it's 48 and 49. So I'm not sure if this is still pertinent or not, but I wanted to do it on the agenda today just in case it still requires my action of purchasing attendance credit. So again, it's a routine item that we've done every year. Karnes City just had their meeting and they actually had it on the agenda. So I'm just following suit and doing what they did just in case we need it.
I move that we approve action item number 6 as it reads in the agenda.
I'll second.
Okay. Motion been made by Russell, seconded by Jerry, that we approve action item number 6 as presented in the agenda. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. Now we move on to item F, communication items, and we will go to the superintendent's report.
So trustees, as I just stated, the legislature was very, very positive in passing some of the bills. House Bill 3 majorly influences us. It positively impacts our district, but it also requires us to do some other things. So since it's been passed here fairly recently, there is kind of a scramble to determine what funding is going to be and then also what districts are going to be responsible for. So as you are aware, if you do not know, everybody in the state uses one of two templates to try to calculate what our finances, how much revenue we're going to be. Majority of people use Omar's template. Omar Garcia has been doing this for a long time. He is the only one in the state. TA doesn't provide a template that tells you how much funding you're going to do. So you enter your property values, you enter ADA, how many students you have, what type of students you have, what programs they're in, what your tax rate is, and you put it in this template, and it generates a bunch of other reports that tells you how much revenue you should base your budget on. So since House Bill 3 has come out, Omar has almost about every 4 or 5 days has updates to this template, new calculations. So this is a pretty rough estimate of where we're at, but I think it is pertinent to us because there's a lot of decisions that you guys are going to have to make prior to August and us adopting the budget. So first off, I want to show you what kind of the template looks like, and then also what House Bill 3, the impact that it's had for us. So the column on the left,
You need the lights here?
Not even unless.
so the yellow column is old law, which if the finance system was identical to what it had been previously, then that's what the funding would be. On the green is House Bill 3, and that is the new funding system. So one of the major changes, regular program allotment, we can see it's a little bit lower, but we get a small mid-size allotment. So any district that's under 300 square miles gets a pretty major bump. So that's almost $1 million increase for us. Another thing that is a pretty big adjustment is our recapture. And you can see net recapture of last year was going to be $2.8 million. Now it's down to 1.5. So those two things have really adjusted what has taken place. So net difference as you start looking at what's going to happen is, if we were still under the old current law, we were going to be operating on around $3.3 million. Now with House Bill 3 passing, it's a little bit over $4 million. So this is based on our preliminary values, that $550 million. We're hoping that when our certified values come back, that we're going to see some positive movement there. So if that does happen, well then, obviously the more money that we're going to generate to be able to budget off of. So again, net difference is around $600,000 that we are going to see an increase to the district.
How far can this swing? We play with the numbers?
It's not going to swing a whole lot because, again, remember that the preliminary values is they withhold 40% of oil and gas. So I would say, a swing of, I would say 30, 40, 30, somewhere around
What kind
there.
of impact would that have?
I didn't put it in, so it's not going to be huge, maybe $100,000, $200,000. But again, kind of positive. One of the other requirements of House Bill 3 is that your level, your Tier 1 and Tier 2 funding, the net difference between old law, what you would have received, and now, House Bill 3, is that you are required to use 30% of that net gain on salaries. So this has been, if you haven't heard of the news, this has kind of been a very, very hot topic issue. Even when they were deciding in the legislature, you know, our speaker, our lieutenant governor came out and said that he wanted $5,000 raises for teachers across the board, and kind of an unfunded mandate. So this was their negotiation and what they agreed upon of how it was going to impact districts. So this is the number that we are working off. It's right now around $80,000 is what 30% of that difference is for us. Out of this $80,000, 75% of that has to go to teachers, counselors, librarians, and nurses who have 5 years of experience, at least 5 years of experience. The other 25% is required to go to other staff, administrators. So administrators are definitely listed as not receiving any of this. The only problem that you have is as you are increasing salaries with the auxiliary staff and then also teachers, now you've bumped up salaries of teachers and people that they are, the administrators who are in charge of them and supervising them now have people underneath them. The majority of them are making more money salary-wise than what your administrators are. So we're going to have to go back and revamp our entire pay scale to make sure that, first off, we meet legislation and we're doing what's required of us, but then secondly, that it's equitable and everybody across the board is kind of making the salary that they need to make. So that's what we've been working on. Again, this is kind of a rough estimate of where we're at, so the numbers that we have now may change quite a bit by the time that we get to August. We have a workshop that we're going to the actual Region Center where we're going to sit down and we're going to go through and calculate this to make sure that everything that we've done so far is accurate and it's valid. So that happens in, I think, the second week in July. So hopefully the July meeting we'll do our budget workshop. August when we do a budget workshop, everything will be kind of calculated. But again, very, very preliminary, but it is very positive for us at this point. So kind of want to go over some of what we use to calculate. So property values, again, this is kind of a running total of what we've had here recently. Our preliminary values that came out in August are in April. 557 million is where we're at. Again, when we get certified values in July, we're hoping that that number will increase. But you can see kind of 2015, 2014 we peaked. Since then we declined to 2016, and since then we've been climbing back up. Again, you know, it's something that we need to be cognizant of. Another thing with House Bill 3 is we compressed our tax rate again. So you actually take 90% of what your 18-19 tax rate was. For us, that means that we're dropping back down and our M&O tax rate will be 99 cents next year.
We're generating this on that?
Yes, yes. So that was part of the House Bill 3 that they increased the state's contribution. The basic allotment went from $5,100 and something to $6,200, so almost $1,100 per kid. Additional revenues that they're putting into the school system. So with that, then they compress tax rates, and yes, everybody across the state is lower. So our M&O tax rate again is going to be lesser than it has been here recently. If you remember 2017-18, we passed a TRE to bump us up to $1.06. All of those golden pennies and the copper pennies and all of that stuff has all gone away. So like I said, it's really changed the finance system. But in game is we're going to have 7-cent reduction in our M&O tax rate, which gives us a little bit of wiggle room on our INS tax rate. If you remember, our payments, bond payments, are consistent over the next 15 years, all the way out to 2035. It's around $2.7 million, almost 2.7. If our values come back at what our preliminaries were, and if we levy that 48 cents like we have been doing, then that will easily make our payment, plus generate some additional funding on the INS side. If you remember when we talked to Dusty Traylor, our financial advisor, a couple of months ago, we've got a few bonds that are going to be callable this year. So this reduction on the M&O side, we may be able to add a few pennies on the INS side if you guys want to, where we can pay down some of that debt early and pay off some of those call options. So we're gonna have some options in August, once we set our tax rate. But again, I just plugged in the number of 51 on the INS side to get $1.50 total tax rate, and again, that's a 4-cent reduction compared to previous years, and that gives us an opportunity to really generate some additional revenues on the INS side to be able to pay down some of those call options. Everybody good with that? And again, as we get closer, and like I said, Dusty will be able to tell us what we'll be able to generate and what we can do with those funds. Because if we do set an elevated tax rate, then we have to say what we're going to do with those funds, and it's got to be a resolution that you've got to pass, that the community has to know what we're going to do with those additional funds. Also wanted to, attendance is a big thing. Again, attendance continues to climb. We're losing a pretty large class, but our kindergarten class is very, very large. With our kinder class, we had 37 who actually came to our kinder camp. So a lot of those, 10 of those are transfers. So we are going through transfers, making sure that we're not over the level. So net gain, it looks like it's about 10 kids difference with the class that graduated, plus the ones that are coming in. Plus we've had some additional transfers. So I went through and moved all of our enrollment. So moved kinder to first to second, and so on, and then plugged in the 37 number in our kinder, and that gets our enrollment. What we are expecting is 372 our first day. And transfers, 79 of those is what is included in that number. There is 7 of those transfers that are still pending paperwork, or the class counts are very, very large. So some of those may not be approved, but again, it's more transfers than we had last year. Okay. Recapture, again, with House Bill 3, you can see the difference in recapture going from 2.6, almost $2.7 million last year, and being reduced to our projected right now is 1.5. So again, the less recapture we pay, the better we feel about the monies get to stay here locally. Here is our exposed expenditures on our M&O side by function. You also have a printout that Terry has created that we can go line by line and you can kind of see this. So it should be agreed here. This is the one that you typically see. Function 11 is instruction. So teachers, and anything from teachers to supplies, any of that stuff is all included in instruction. Instruction is by far our largest function code and our biggest expenditures. I do want to kind of go over some stuff. All of this, payroll-wise, this includes a flat 4% raise for everybody in the district. If y'all remember going back to House Bill 3, and some of the requirements is there is funding that has to be put towards salaries. So as we're calculating this, again, this was kind of early. We weren't sure what our number was going to be, so we just added a 4% across the board on everything. Okay, so that's reflected in these numbers here. So it's broke out by payroll and other. Inside instruction, you also have an increase in sub-pay. We busted our sub pay quite a bit this year, almost double what we actually had budgeted. We also have $85,000 in grant expenditures that the Education Foundation reimburses us for, but that's also included in that number. 12 is our library, so again, the only increase there is salaries. Curriculum, staff development, same thing. Instructional administration, principals. The only increases there are salaries. Same thing with counselors' salaries. That 4% is the only increase there. Health services, the nurse. You can see that on payroll, you see a pretty substantial drop. The reason why you saw a substantial drop, if you remember, compared to last year we had a nurse who was on the top end scale of the experience, so her salary was a little bit elevated. And we also had a newer nurse that we overlapped on some of the calendar, so we were paying 2 salaries on the nurse last year. So now you see a pretty big reduction going down to that salary. Student transportation, again, you got salaries there that are increased. Also included in that student transportation is their $75,000 that is still allocated for a new bus. I don't think we need to purchase a new bus. I think what we have next year will get us by, but we'll leave that line item in there just to roll over some money. Co-curricular stuff, again, you know, that's basically salary increases. Function 41, salary increases for the general administration. Function 51, the plant maintenance and operation. We have a pretty large reduction here. The reason why it's reduced is you had the parking lot expenses that were budgeted last year, so that whatever the amount that we did, the asphalt millings comes out of there. You also had a line item for, I think, $15,000 for CTE building upgrades, which is removed. And you also had the cell phone booster of $75,000 that is removed from there. So all 3 of those have come out. That's why you see that reduction. On function 52, security and monitoring services, you see a very, very large increase. And the reason why that's an increase is now we've budgeted for our law enforcement. So again, that's our contracted services with the sheriff's department. So around $50,000 a year to have that deputy here full time. And then we also have, we just put a line item in there of $50,000 for security upgrades. So as we talk about security in closed session, then we can adjust that number as we see fit. Function 53, again, is salaries. Function 61. Function 91, the recapture, you can see the difference from last year versus this year. Function 93, you see an increase. The increase is because now we have a DAP, which you just approved before so. And then also the Goliad Special Ed Co-op. Goliad withdrew from the co-op, which caused the remaining districts in their pro rata share had to go up. So that's the 2 increases there. Function 95 is JJADP. We do have a student who has attended JJ, so we have allocated some funds to that. And then function 99 is just our appraisal office. So Karnes and Wilson County will pay us $100,000 for that. So total, you can see expenditures going from 7.2 down to 6.1. And that mainly is due to the reduction in recapture. Food service, cafeteria, you see some salary increases there. Everything else is pretty much the same. Debt service payments, this is our bond payments. You can see our payment next year that we're allocated to is almost identical to what we were last year. So total proposed expenditures, if you have the M&O, the INS, and cafeteria, you see a reduction of about $1.2 million in overall budget. So again, pretty positive, but a rough estimate of where we're at now. But again, just wanted to bring it to your attention and some of those new line items. As we get closer, we'll have a better printout for you where you can actually see what has changed. I also want to go over yes, as I've been, and you should have a hard copy of this with you as well. So as we have started working on budget, again, 30% of Tier 1 and Tier 2 revenues, the difference between 18-19 versus House Bill 3 revenues is we have to spend 30% of that on salaries. 75% of that has to go with teachers that have 5 years of experience or more. Also, with the state increasing the basic allotment, your state minimum teacher pay scale is based off what they put into the basic allotment. So the basic allotment for teachers, the minimum pay scale has drastically increased. If you look at the second column on the left, this is where we were last year. This was the teacher pay scale as we've known it the last couple of years. We were paying $9,000 above the base for teachers on year 0 through 19. Anybody on year 20 or above was $10,000 above base. The new state minimums are drastically different. So this column here, G, is the new state minimums. So if you compare across the board, you know, it's $4,000 to $5,500 difference that they increased the state minimums on the teacher pay scale. So we have quite a few people that are on the teacher pay scale. So nurses, counselors, teachers, some other staff are all on there. So if we were to keep our contracts of $9,000 or $10,000 above the state minimum, you're looking at a number that's very, very large. It's going to impact our budget. And
Yeah, but couldn't you just leave the state minimum where it is, or excuse me, the school minimum?
yes, yeah,
And just adjust everything wherever you're gonna,
we can. But part of that with House Bill 3 is you've got to spend 30% of those additional revenues on.
that's what I'm saying, that's where your increase would come.
Correct.
Rather than starting at your old number and using the same increment.
Right, right. So that's what I've done. I've gone and I've kind of adjusted it in 3 different options, but just kind of wanted to give you kind of some feedback, or not feedback, but information on where it came from. So if you see kind of further down, you can see the House Bill 3 requirement, and that's as written in law, that 30% of the difference in Tier 1 and Tier 2 funding has to be spent